As if we haven't gotten enough of the patient puns when we were shooting the thing.
Well, it's the perfect segue to talk about how when sometimes you get film distributed or acquired, you don't have any control over the title being changed.
No, you're jumping the gun. Like that's later in the podcast.
Stay tuned. Today we're going to talk about Kyle and I made a horror feature called Patient. Josh made a documentary feature. It was our first feature, our debut feature, if you will. Joshua David Matthews here made a documentary feature, also his debut, called The Great Journey. Two different.
Is it a debut if it never gets distributed?
Yes.
Damn it.
Gotcha there. But we want to talk about the differences that we have sort of come across in both, going from sort of script to screen in that entire process and what we've learned sort of after the fact. Like, I feel like so much of making a feature film, obviously there's so much to plan for, and then there's the shoot and editing, but then there's this whole world of things that happens after you put the film out there, if it gets out there. And I think there's a lot of stuff that we learned along the way that we sort of wanted to dig a little bit deeper into.
And I mean, I'm especially interested, Josh, to hear about your journey, since I don't believe I've heard that before.
Was it in fact a great journey? Thanks for the tee up, Kyle.
It was fairly great. It was great in that somebody trusted us enough with money to make a film. A great journey came about strangely. We were approached by somebody we worked with at SCAD, Krista Ghanem. She was fantastic on Dawn. She was a great person to work with. About a year after we graduated, she approached me saying, "I'd like you to make a documentary about my father." But his name was Elias Ghanem. And I hadn't really heard about him. So when she told me that he was the doctor to the stars in Las Vegas, Elvis Presley's doctor, Liberace's doctor. He was also the athletic commissioner in Vegas during the time that Mike Tyson bit Evander Holyfield's ear off. So he's the one that took the license away from Tyson. That kind of blew my mind. It's like, I've been working with you for years and you're just now telling me like, this is where you're from. We had just moved to Austin, me and Kevin Ray, who we started our company, Chime Step Films. And when she approached us for this, she invested in this. She paid for this short film. It's the first short film I've ever been paid to do. Not just like, here's the budget, but actually here's the budget plus a salary, which was nice.
Big moment.
For the people at home, what's that feeling like?
It didn't go far because it was the only job I had. But it was like, oh, wow, straight out of film school, I get commissioned to do a short documentary. And I think the idea was to do a feature film on it, but we found that it just kind of worked as a nice short, and it turned into more of a family kind of drama. He had a strange son that was involved in it, so we tried to get him to come out and be part of the interview. He didn't show up. We eventually did a Zoom interview with him, and it just turned out to be about family, which to me was a nice story. And then I think they liked it as well because when we pitched them an idea for a feature film, they immediately signed up. So they invested in a feature film that was not a great journey. It was a story about a middle school theater company in Austin, Texas. We wanted to make a coming of age story set in theater camp, and they asked for final cut. So we didn't give them final cut on this documentary, and they said, "Well, you can't shoot it." Cool. We have this money that was invested in this project that we're not going to be able to shoot. So we pitched them a second idea, which was a very personal story with my partner, Kevin, about his childhood friends and the films they used to make after school. They made a trilogy of these Lord of the Rings-esque films in their backyard, but they never really finished the story. So we went back. The documentary is about him going back, reconnecting with his friends, finishing this middle school, high school kind of anthology story that they were doing. And just kind of the life experiences along the way. Like who were you as a kid making these films and who are you now? At the same time, being very personal with himself and his life situation where he is now, coming out of film school, going to LA not working out, coming to Austin, doing documentaries, so on and so forth. And that's kind of what the story was about. So it still became a coming of age story. It was just a coming of age story, like after the fact, like in your 30s looking back on it, which I found to be a pretty fun idea. And so did Crystal and her family who invested in the film. So we were able to pitch them that idea and move right into production on that. I think it's a good time to stop and, tell me how Patient came about.
Yeah. So Patient, the first feature, again, this is how I remember it, and I'm sure Jason will chime in if I miss any of these details. But Patient started around 2011. That was about a year after Jason and I were out of film school, and we were working gigs. I was doing some PA gigs. Jason, I think, was freelancing. One of the pieces of advice that I think we all got collectively from different places was go do that thing that you want to do. Stop trying to do other people's projects or work, go do your thing, go make your film. So we all thought that was a good idea and started going down that path. If I remember correctly, Jason and I were in New York visiting Michael, who ended up being the DP of the film, who's a friend of ours from film school. I don't know if it was around Thanksgiving or not, but we watched the movie Thanksgiving, a movie which I did not enjoy very much. But I was left thinking, okay, if this can be a movie, if this can be a thing, we certainly can do that. So if my recollection serves, we went out for some sushi, and then over many glasses of sake, we decided that you and Brett were going to write a horror film. And it was going to be in one location, and that was going to be the idea that we were going to make.
It was the perfect way to cap off a classy evening after a watching of Thanksgiving, which is an incredible film, is sushi and sake.
From a business standpoint, I think that the next question we had was, how are we going to make a feature? And so around that time, I think this was getting to be around the start of 2012, Jason and I started our production company, Return Style Pictures, which was both our creative, vehicle to come up with ideas and to work on things, but also our corporate clients. And so the goal was, let's get some corporate clients, let's do some work, and let's take that money and make a feature. And
Sorry, can we stop down to explain the title of Return Style, if you'd be so willing to explain?
Yes. Return Style Pictures. The name comes from me getting stuck in a turnstile in New York City with my bag and causing a traffic jam in the subway station. I think it was on the trip where we watched Thanksgiving.
I think it was. A lot of good stuff happened on that trip.
Yeah. I mean, I think the official story was that we want to return style to filmmaking.
Yes.
But no, it had to do with an actual turnstile.
That was the art house answer we would give to people.
So when you and Brett got together to write the script, how did you come up with the story idea for Patient? You just decided it was going to be one location and that was it?
When I was out in LA, we had started writing a comedy, an indie comedy together called Continental. And
I remember that one.
I remember, so then Brett, Kyle, and I kind of talked about the idea of, doing that first. And that was sort of what we kind of were trying to get into, I think, that space for a minute. But we sort of quickly realized that without, having access to some A-list talent and then also like a higher budget than I think we had anticipated, that was also a lot harder to achieve than I think we had anticipated. Classic things you learn coming out of film school. Everything's a little bit trickier than you hoped it would be. But in doing that, we kind of learned how to write for something we wanted to make. So that was where the idea of Patient came out. Was like, okay, we know, like, I love horror films. I love genre. We know genre is something that you can get away with, selling the idea, because you're sort of selling like an experience as opposed to talent, per se. Mm-hmm. Not that they're not mutually exclusive at times, but so the idea to write Patient first and foremost, I think, came from there. Like, if we do genre, we can figure out a way to sort of to get this out there. Like there's already sort of a distribution plan in place that we can find other films to sort of model ours after. And that was a big thing Colin and I talked about from the get-go, is like, let's have a plan before we even write this. Like, okay, we know genre is sort of always like a safe bet, for distribution, even if it's, on smaller platforms or whatever it might be. And then how do we keep our budget down? And the immediate thing we thought of was, well, what if it's a single location? And some of that we were probably, writing ourselves in a corner a lot from where it ended up, because we ended up with a single room location with a small cast of characters, and our lead like can't speak and can't move because she's a paraplegic. So
you really
Brett
gave
and
yourself a lot of limitations.
Yeah. And I mean, Brett and I talked about that too. I think sometimes, and I think that's his quote, sometimes that's when creativity sings, is when you're sort of backed into a corner and you have to find your way out of it. And I think like, so in some ways into our detriment, because we had to kind of, cobble together aspects of the film in the way we would have to do anyway for a low budget. But then I think when you're giving yourself all of those limitations, you're sort of like, you are kind of putting yourself in a bit of a box that I think sometimes works really well. And other times maybe it wasn't as successful as we wanted it to be, which is, hindsight looking back, like certainly plenty of things I would do differently, plenty of things that, I would want to update or whatever. I mean, there's a million,
Give me one. One thing you would do differently.
The entire movie. Once we decided we wanted to do a horror film, and we had our sort of stipulations set, like it had to be a single location. We were trying to think of like, well, how do we keep somebody in a single room for an entire movie? And that's kind of where the hospital route came into play, because we thought, well, if somebody's in a hospital, we can kind of follow them during their stay. But then, what's sort of keeping in the hospital room? We thought, well, maybe there's some element of, what is ailing them that is sort of the reason they're stuck there. And that's when we came up with the idea that the main character, was a part of this cult and sort of gotten into this, like avoided this mass suicide and ended up getting shot by the leader of the cult, and it ended up paralyzing her. So that got into sort of where we formulated the story, which was after this sort of mass cult suicide, this hospital patient is tormented by the ghost of these past cultists who have basically cursed her to kill anyone that can hear her voice unless she offers up a soul in place of her own. So that sort of became
Curse to Kill.
That's why somebody called it Curse to Kill. So then it became, okay, we've got sort of the setup and conflict, and it just, was sort of having fun with the set pieces that we could come up with that, like what would be around the idea of, who might wander in to hear her voice, and also just the idea of like who might come into the hospital room to visit with her. And that's how you're getting some backstory and things across. So in a weird way, it almost, and I've seen this in a couple of review sites that have been kind, where it's sort of like a play almost. It's sort of, you're witnessing this story unfold much like a play. And that's a compliment to me, because it's still, to me, there's still this story being told throughout the course of the film. And, it's not wall to wall action, so to speak, but it was a really fun challenge to write. And I think it was an even more fun challenge to shoot, because we had to think of ways to get creative, but then also like not do stuff for the sake of doing things, like not mix everything up just for the sake of mixing it up, but trying to find stuff that was interesting, but also like relevant to the scenes at hand. Did it work every time? Maybe. I think we definitely could have like opened up some of the shots, here and there to take more advantage of the space we were in. But I think for the most part, we were very, very heavily focused on performance. We wrote it to shoot it. It wasn't like we wrote it and hoped that we might find funding. It's like, we are going to write something we know we can do. And that was sort of the first big lesson learned for us, kind of after we had written something that we'd sort of hoped we maybe could do, to like, we're going to write something we know we can do. And Kyle and I at the time with Return Style, we're doing a lot of corporate gigs. And because it was just him and I in this company, that we weren't paying a lot of overhead, we were able to sort of, I won't say quickly amass a bunch of money, but like we were able to save up a lot of money that we could then put towards for the film. Like, since a lot of it is largely self-financed, and that was another lesson that we can unpack either tonight or some other ways.
Yeah, I think my favorite story about that funding was that during, I think it was around the summer or maybe entering the fall of 2012, we lost our biggest client. And therefore, we had only had half the funds, half the 50,000 that we wanted to, the original budget target was 50,000. So we only had half of that. And we're like, oh, great. What do we do now? We don't have this client anymore. And so I think at that juncture, I think you guys just jumped into writing again, and continuing to polish the story. As luck would have it, a few months later, that client reorganized and came back, and we got them back as a client. And not only did we get them back as a client, but they came on with a retainer. So they paid us up front for the next year of work that we were going to do for them, which was both a good thing and a bad thing. I mean, the good thing is that we now had the funds and we had them pretty immediately. The bad thing was that we were going to have to tie or work in these projects, this client's projects in the middle of trying to do this feature and sort of around it. And in fact, we did end up shooting one of the client's projects in the warehouse that we shot the film in.
Like a day after we wrapped the feature.
After we wrapped,
shot. Yeah. Just completely exhausted. But it was all very fun stuff. Like it was a Walking Dead-ish style thing, like parodies. It was a lot of fun to shoot.
One of the biggest things was what Jason mentioned before, is that we kind of had a plan for distribution before we started shooting, or really even before we started writing. One of the other big pieces of advice that I think has helped shape my career has been, don't do everything yourself and work with the people who know what they're doing. So we went out and did that for a lot of things. The attorney we ended up using for Return Style happened to be a film producer herself. Her name was Judy. And so she really became one of our mentors on the project and guided us throughout the project. We went and hired a casting director to do the casting. All of these things, bringing on people who had the experience in what we were trying to do, so we didn't have to do it all of ourselves. And then I think another big thing, and we could talk about how the industry has changed, but we did go to AFM, the American Film Market, in the early years. I think the first time we went was in 2012, and sort of shopped the idea around with the sales agents, to get an idea, to get a sense of who would be interested in this type of project once we were done. It was less of us going out there trying to find funding to make it, but more so to find out who was going to take this on once we were finished, or who would be interested in it. Even back,
it's not that long ago, but we were seeing what I think is like, essentially what is sort of, I think, almost a given now is like people weren't looking to pay you to develop or pay you to create ideas. They were looking for finished films. And I think that was a big awakening for me, because I was still in my headspace of like, oh, we just got to get the right idea to the right person, and then they'll give us the money to make it. And that just wasn't the case. Yeah. And I feel like now more than ever, it's just, now it's like, you got to finish movie. And if you don't, it's kind of like, well,
we were right at the end of that. Like, DVD sales were still a thing. There was still these avenues that existed that you could go down that, more or less worked every time. And right as we were doing Patient for the first time, those things were breaking down. So there was no money, coming from any of those sources to actually make the thing. It was all about the finished product.
The big question everybody has is, where do you find your money? Were there other avenues did you do? You don't have to get into the details of it, but
yeah, so we started out thinking the thing was going to cost $50K, and that was our fundraising target from ourselves with the corporate work. We quickly got into pre-production and did the budget, and it jumped really quickly up to around $95K. Yeah. And so we were like, okay, we don't have time to necessarily pause and go get more clients. So then it's the how much do we have in our savings, and what family and friends can we go and talk to and get them to come on board.
And what would you say is the highest expense that money went to, Kyle?
On Patient, the largest single line item was food and catering. And while it was good food and catering, it also was not extremely expensive, and it still cost a lot. So
it just costs a lot to feed people.
It costs a lot to feed
short
people.
Films, like that's the biggest chunk of our budget is like
food, the things you can't go cheap on, food and insurance.
Yeah. Yeah. I was lucky enough that I had a single investor in our project, but that also meant that we had to do everything on the cheap. So I was DP and Kevin was editor. We both directed it, but that was it. I think I had 1 second shooter for 2 hours on the entire documentary. And it shows that I am the sequel DP. We try to make it really meta and just kind of fit the narrative because it was very low budget. And I think it works, but it's also very low budget.
Hang on real quick too. Is there a way to watch Great Journey, Josh?
For you, yeah, I can send you a link. But that's about it.
It's not currently. Okay, no, I couldn't remember who it was on. If we wanted to like tell people to watch some places.
No, it's we wanted to release it just for free, just because it's made and it's done, and it's a decent film to watch. But there's some rights issue with a song that we still haven't purchased that we can purchase anytime, but it's still going to cost us to purchase it. He's fine. He gave us a low rate for it, but that's just one more cost. And then our editor, Kevin, he's a working editor, so he'd have to find the drive, get back into it. I think it was cut because it's old. Like this is 10 years now. So I think it was like cut on Final Cut 7 or 10 or whatever the
7.
last good one was.
It would have been 7.
7 was the last good one.
And he's like, I don't have that anymore. So it would just be a kind of a pain in the ass. It's still something I want to get done, but it's fallen low on the agenda. If you're listening to this podcast and you really, really, really want to watch it, email me.
You can pay for the rights to his song.
And you can pay for the rights to his song, and I will send it to you.
There you go. There's some producing for you.
Our next topic on Patient is, the joys of production. I want to hear about your production, though. What was good? What was bad? What worked? What didn't?
What was good was that at the time, that was my only job. Like it paid enough that I could do the production without having to work another gig. I probably should have worked other gigs because as soon as it was done, it was like, well, now I'm broke and unemployed. It was good that I had the time to do it. And me and Kevin lived in Austin together, and it starts there. It's a road movie. So we drive from Texas all the way to Tennessee. We do Nashville, we do Cleveland, we do Orlando, and then we come back to Texas. So just kind of a little road trip film, which was nice to do. So that was a fun part of production, is just being on the road and just being active. I like shooting documentaries because I can just kind of think on the fly, because you just don't know what you're going to get till you get there, which is fun. Nerve-wracking as well. You only get one take at stuff, which is scary when you're a one camera. I think there was a couple of times that Kevin grabbed a camera and went off, but he was a character in the story, so he couldn't do that a lot. So that would also be the downside of it. It was a one-person shoot. We didn't have enough money to do another cameraman. We didn't have enough money to do audio, so I'm running audio as well, which is just terrifying because it sounds good when you're running around trying to get it, and you just hope that you have it. And I think everything turned out okay, but it would have been nice to have a dedicated sound person. Production was fine. Editing was more of a bitch because it's like, what is this story now? And then during editing, I was actually going through a divorce during editing, so I was out of the picture a lot for it. And Kevin would edit, and then send me cuts, and I'd review. And I wasn't able to be there hands-on as much as I wanted to during that time. But so that was kind of a pain in the ass.
What a titular metaphor for your film, considering the path that you were also having in your life while making it.
It was a great journey, man.
and we learned that we needed to be patient.
How long did your principal photography take? Did you do it all at once? Or?
The good thing about this story was we could kind of set our own timeline, and we actually set a timeline for the narrative as well. But so I think that we shot it maybe in 2 to 3 months. Like once we got on the road, that was about 3 weeks. So we shot a little bit before and after, pretty short. The editing was probably about 6 months. It's just been so long ago. I could be completely off.
That's why I'm trying, as I go through my memories, I'm trying to throw years on there so that you can get a sense of what year it was. Let's see. On Patient, as with most production, there was a lot of crazy that happened, and so we shot for 3 weeks in July of 2013. We shot in an auto parts warehouse that we had built the set in. We were lucky to find a gentleman named David Bourne,
who is a legend.
Who is a legend. He owned somehow all the locations that we needed for the film.
Nice.
And we would just call him as a joke and be like, "Do you have this other thing?" He's like, "Yeah, I got that." And so that was nice. He let us use it for free. But we were in an auto parts warehouse in July in Atlanta, and it was very hot. The set did have AC, but as you know, AC is loud if you don't have it set up correctly to shoot. For some weird reason, we did not think of piping it into the actual set until the third week. And I don't remember who. It may have been Adam, who was working as a PA, who was like, "Hey, there's some conduit here. We can put this down into the drop ceiling of the set." And we're like, "Oh, why didn't we think of that 2 weeks ago?" Because it was like a sauna in that hospital room. Just thinking of the random things that happened. There was a wasp's nest that was right outside the door to the studio at one point. So we had to attempt to knock that down and get it out of the way. Our grip truck with all the gear kept breaking down, even though we weren't actually driving anywhere with it. Like we had it, we picked it up, we brought it over there, and then it just wouldn't run. So we would like go to return it and it wouldn't work. We would have to like, someone would have to come and tow it away, and it was a big mess. We shot next to a retirement community. And so every once in a while there was ambulances and yelling that would come from that direction.
And yelling.
There was a rooster that crowed every morning. Or whenever it was inconvenient for us.
Whenever it felt like it. The most emotional scene that we'd shoot, and then you'd have an actress in tears, and then all of a sudden in the background you just hear you're like, look at the sound guy and be like, can we roll that off? Is that no? All right. I'm so sorry.
We had a day player show up who didn't know their lines, and we had to get rid of them. And David Bourne, the location owner, actually ended up standing in for that person. Cool. Yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy. It was fun.
Get rid of them.
Yes.
You don't mess with Kyle. He was silenced.
But I like how all of Kyle's memories are like everything that went wrong that a producer has to deal with.
I will say that while those things were all the things that made it interesting, none of those were major problems.
Yeah.
Like none of those stopped production.
You do all this planning for a film, and you're thinking, like, as a writer and director, like I'm thinking purely about story, characters, like, and obviously like anything within the scene, like anything we're shooting, like is on my mind. It's like you don't necessarily think about, the rogue rooster that's 20 feet out, the things that you just have to learn to like, deal with on the fly. And it's interesting too, because I feel like, I'm backtracking a little bit, but yeah, like the pre-production leading up to the shoot, you're so focused on all of these minute details. And we're doing the same thing with, we certainly like had the help to take off some of the work, but still wearing a ton of hats, as many hats as you need to make the thing. Like I was doing a lot of like, I remember, trying to find like, we had like a scene with like needles, and I had to find these, like the only place I could find that would like sell me these like prop needles was in like Japan and stuff. And, or making sure that anything we had, filing down sharp things, like really like minute detail things that like, I just never would have thought of having to do, testing effects. Like we didn't have like a ton of crazy, blood makeup stuff. It's certainly in there, but like, just doing all those effects to make sure they'd work on the day, without even, and then, getting into like the director duties of like, I need to do a scene analysis and rehearse with my actors and go through all of these things that, by the time you're on set, you're just like, you've almost like got this adrenaline, but you're almost like operating on autopilot, because you what I think the hope is that you've prepared so much that no matter what happens, you've got an answer for everything.
Undoubtedly, something's going to come up that you did not think about.
Yeah. And I think I honestly, I feel like I've learned to embrace that. Like I definitely, I remember like being stressed out a few times on that feature. I mean, especially like I think I lost 25 pounds. I don't remember, just from like stress, which was funny though, because again, thanks to good catering, I gained it all back. We would go back to we were all staying at Kyle's family's lake house. They were kind enough to sort of put the crew up there so we didn't have to rent a hotel.
Nice.
So another buddy, Chris, who was the AD on the project, would basically drive a van full of the crew from this lake house to set every single day. So I could like get some rest or work on the scene while he was driving us. Couldn't have done without him. But at the end of the night, we would watch dailies, and that was my time to basically like take care of my health a bit more. So I'd always have this box of cookies that got left over, because I don't know why. Take care of my health, eat a box of cookies. It's tandem. But I'd be watching dailies, just like slamming cookies. And I'm pretty sure within a week I'd gained that weight back.
And he would fall asleep watching those dailies at the computer.
Oh, I'm sure.
I would, yeah.
And that's where I would find him the next morning.
Just asleep, drooling with a bunch of cookie crumbs.
Speaking of that lake house, in terms of we've all learned stuff as we've been filmmakers over the years, and we've done things. But one of the biggest lessons from this film that I learned was around that lake house. It was cheaper. It was free. we were all staying there for free, but it was about an hour and a half away from the location. And any cost savings that we got from from driving back and forth were completely eaten up by the pain of driving an hour and a half to its set and from set every day. We should have just gotten hotels for the people close. And
it was an hour and a half one way.
Yeah, it was an hour and a half one way, and then maybe a little bit more with traffic in the mornings.
How long did your post-production process take? Because I'm assuming, well, I know that you edited, Jason, but was it always going to be like you editing it? Did you have to go straight back to work?
I did.
What was the deal?
Yes. So, well, that was part of production, I think, was the idea that, like, Kyle, you were working full time. I was freelancing. So Kyle was able to take some PTO, or maybe half PTO, half non.
I had a very understanding boss who let
good.
me work at nights during the shoot so I could work during the day.
Nice.
Look at that. And then I was able to essentially take like 3 weeks off since I was freelancing. And that's part of why I was freelancing at the time. Was I was trying to make sure that I sort of gave myself that insurance of like, I can pick up a job here and there when I need to pay the rent. Did you quit
a job, or were you freelancing this whole time? Did you like
freelancing the whole time?
Okay.
So from the time that we wrote the script to the time that we delivered it for the final whatever, I was freelancing the entire time. And I think that whole timeline was right around 4 or 5 years. Like, now it didn't take that long to make the film, but if when it's broken out over the writing over several months, it's so funny that, you spend all this time writing, you shoot for 3 weeks, and then you spend like, 10 times the amount in post. And what made the post thing drag out so long was, just the idea of having to go back to work and sort of, especially to recoup some personal costs with the film, but also just, again, paying rent, my Taco Bell fund, that kind of thing. So I was freelancing during the day, and that's when I think I was doing my craziest schedule that I've done in my life, where I would wake up, at 7, 8 a.m. and freelance until 5 or 6, make dinner, hang out with Megan for a bit, and then literally edit until like 3 or 4, like basically until I couldn't stay awake anymore, because I knew that was the only time I was going to get that week. And I would obviously have like a longer period of time on the weekends where I could do it. But we shot a lot. There's a lot of, like, Patient's pretty dialogue heavy, and a lot of times we were sort of rolling on scenes to let the characters like work out the emotional arcs, as opposed to trying to cut too often. We wanted to give them a chance to kind of, fully start in a scene, fully end in a scene where it made sense. Like, obviously we're not shooting just nonstop everything all the time, but for some of the more emotional scenes, like having that. But so I had more options in the editing room that I think I was used to doing. But at the same time, I was also trying to approach it like a bunch of, vignettes. Like, I wasn't trying to take the whole film on at once, especially knowing that I was going to have to edit this over the course of the next however long it was. And I think from like the time I had the footage to the time the film was done was roughly 2 years.
Oh, wow.
But I was taking, just the individual scenes and focusing a scene at a time, like I think is pretty typical for a feature. And then I think that last last half a years when I was really like analyzing the film as a whole, but I was really trying to get those scenes in proper working order, especially being broken up so much. It's like, it might take me a week, to get a rough cut, because it was like a few hours here, a few hours there. So that was definitely something that as far as learning things, like if I was going to do that again, I would just want to take the time off and just spend a good.
I was about to ask you if you would do that again.
Yeah, I don't think so. And I don't think the film like necessarily suffered for it, but I also don't think it's like, it was what I had to do at the time.
Yeah.
So it's what I did.
I was going to say, if I could choose, think about doing like a different editor, like hiring an editor?
Never.
Just never. I didn't think so.
Never. Editing is hands down my favorite part of filmmaking.
Yeah.
Like it is what I look forward to the most. So like it is like, honestly, it's less of like it's not an ego trip. It's not a whatever. No. It's more so like, this is the part that like I'm doing all of this so that I can get to this.
I know.
And I edit for a living. So like, I very much speak that language and I work in that world. So for me, there's a lot of little intricacies to it that I would, both expect and look, for a scene. Like, and that's the way I feel like I shoot my stuff now is I sort of shoot for the edit. Like I don't do a ton of coverage. Like I'm sort of trying to edit it in my head before we even get on set.
I do too. And I think, and you can maybe tell me if this is true or not, but I don't think editors like working with me because I don't give a lot of coverage. I don't give you a lot of options. Like I really do shoot the script and I shoot for the edit. Like scene A, shot A goes into shot B, goes into shot C. Like there's not a lot to play with. I find the whole process to me is just like writing a script. Like every process is just like fine tuning that script a little bit more. And editing is kind of like that last draft of the screenplay.
What's the famous saying? You make a movie 3 times, once when you write the script, once when you shoot it, and once when you edit it. And maybe a 4th or 5th time that the distribution company is like, hey, change that. This whole thing, change it. We did not have to deal with that, thankfully. We
didn't have
had
to deal with any changes in distribution.
We had a very cool company basically take the film as is. There were some things that happened along the way that we had no control over.
Tell me about this process, because I know bits of it. Y'all didn't have a large festival run.
Yes.
Is that by design, or was that?
It's a bit of both. So we finished the film, or we shot the film in summer 2013. We finished our pickups, I would say probably by April or May of 2014. By the time of the American film market, which was in November of 2014, we had enough of a finished product that we were ready to start having conversations. So Jason and I went out again to AFM in 2014 and met with a lot of the same distributors that we had talked to 2 years prior. And this time we had a finished cut to show them. And we had some conversations, we had some interest, and we ended up with Shoreline Entertainment was the company that ended up purchasing it.
How did that process go? I've not.
The process was, it was a pretty simple thing in terms of they watched the trailer and they looked at some of the marketing materials. We're like, yeah, this looks like something that we can pick up. Do you have all of these elements for it? Do you have the rights for it? Can you deliver it? Yes. Okay, let's do it.
Nice.
We were lucky enough to work with our attorney, Judy Kim, on that deal. And to make sure that everything was covered. This was the first time Jason or I had done a distribution deal or a sales agreement. But they were great to work with, and the process was relatively straightforward. The delivery process, I think this is the first time that we had delivered a film, and so that there were some challenges there. We had another $50K increase in the budget for some lab and post work, some QC fixes, things that Jason cringes at now because he does them daily in his job. But back then we didn't know.
Did not know. I was doing real estate videos that were being posted on YouTube. So it was a different world for what I was delivering.
Yeah. And so once that was done, once the film was with Shoreline and once we delivered it, we delivered the film in the end of 2015 was when we started delivery. And then Shoreline started actual distribution of it, which we would call our release date in 2016, in May, I believe. It was at a film festival in Spain, in Madrid. Was
Nocturna.
That was the world premiere of Patient, and so Shoreline handled the festival plans for the film. We had not really submitted it to many before then. I think maybe one or two, but by the time that we were going to start doing the festival run, we had already given it to Shoreline, and they did the premiere at Nocturna, and then they started distribution, and so it went out on Amazon Prime. It was on DVD. I think you can still buy it on DVD Amazon Prime.
I have a copy of it.
Do you? I have one too. It was in Redbox for a while. It was strangely never on Blu-ray. It was on DVD, but not Blu-ray, which I've always found interesting. And then it was on Showtime, and Showtime was another interesting challenge in the sense that Showtime wanted to change the title of the film. So we had that was something we've never dealt with before either, and we had to do some scrambling with our errors and omissions insurance to make sure the new name was covered and cleared, and things that you don't know exist in filmmaking until you have to deal with them.
And what was the reason they gave you for changing the name?
I think they thought it would sell better or get more views.
They changed it to Curse to Kill.
Yes. So it went from Patient to Cursed to Kill.
If it gets released now, would it be Patient or Cursed to Kill?
It's only Cursed to Kill when it's related to Showtime.
Okay.
So it would be Patient right now. And Shoreline still does have the film. And they still are actively releasing it.
That's cool.
I have seen foreign posters like in the Asian markets for the film on occasion, which is
nice.
It's a very fun thing to see as filmmakers, doing small things and doing indie stuff up until that point. I was used to creating all that content myself or having Jason do it. we were the ones who created it. It's interesting to see, you know, all of a sudden a poster come out that someone else has created that's in a different language. And I don't know, I love it. I have a collection of them.
My only tie to this film is I read the script. I think I gave minimal notes. And then my second one is I am the one who found out that it was on Showtime before any of y'all.
Yep.
I was randomly looking for something to watch late at night and it popped up, Curse to Kill. I'm like, that artwork looks very familiar.
We may have known it was being released. We probably didn't know it had been released.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I'd heard that it was going to be released.
It was fun. Of the moments in the distribution of Patient, doing the deal with Shoreline was one of my favorite moments, because I think it was sort of that validation that like, hey, we made something and someone liked it. So it was very fun to do that deal with them. The other big one was seeing all of the press and the information about Showtime come out. That was a lot of fun. It was worth the additional work that we had to do as far as the E&O and the title change.
Don't get me wrong. I love the film. It means a lot to me on just like a sentimental level, just for what it stood for and everything. It is interesting. I think it would maybe, if we had released it now, it'd maybe do better, because I think the audience now has a bit more patience for like the slow burn horror and things like that. But at the same time, like obviously, like in Josh, I'm sure you feel the same way. There's a lot of stuff that you would potentially go back and change. There's a lot of things you learn throughout the years, and like I won't say we did it backwards, because I feel like that's almost has like a derogatory whatever sensibility to it. But like in theory, you know, you do a few shorts and then you use those skills from the shorts and to make your feature. And we've been making movies since we were kids, so like there's been that element. But I think it's interesting now that we're kind of coming off of these features that we made, 10 years ago now? I mean, longer if you count the time we actually wrote them. And now we're kind of back in the short game, doing somewhat of the same thing, like, you know, making these shorts, honing our skills, hopefully getting better, and then prepping for the next big thing. But it's nice to be able to look back at these things and still have these learnings.
I look back on Patient and the time during all of it with very fond memories. You know, during the shoot, of course, it's stressful, and of course, you're not really having the most fun. But you know, when you look back, you know, you did a thing. You know, it was a bunch of us that got together and did what we said we were going to do. And I think that was the important piece, at least for me. It was like, hey, we set out to do a thing, and you know, we said we were going to do this, and we followed through, and we did it. And you know, I also like. I can't thank enough the crew that we had on Patient, who helped us with it. It was a low budget feature. We didn't pay them enough. We paid them some, but certainly not enough. We tried to make up for it, food and lodgings and activities and things. And but you know, at the end of the day, there was a group of people who took 3 weeks off of their life to come help us, you know, do our dream. And it would not be a film without every single one of them.
100%. I think you get that a lot too. Even with the shorts now, it's like there's that mentality of like, if I'm writing something and I'm directing something, like I know I can get people on board to care about it, but no one's probably going to care about it as much as you do, because it's your thing, like, right? And it's just like, but then I think there's also some excitement that comes from the idea of like, well, this guy's excited enough to help me with it, and then that, you know, transfers into me wanting to maybe help them do something with their film, whatever. But I do think that we were very fortunate to have the people we had work on this, and they were just, all of them were just excited to kind of like do the thing like we were. And I think it was sort of, in a way, it was almost good when we did it, because we were sort of, you know, in that fresh faced youngster mode a little bit, coming out of school, where we just wanted to like prove something to ourselves. It's given us this nice foundation for learning, and also just like moving forward and the stuff we're doing now.
How dare you insult the film? Like, by
just be patient. You know, regardless of whether or not you succeed, it's like you're doing it because you want to do it. I think that was the biggest lesson I learned after Patient was like, I didn't stop enjoying making films after it. Like, but I was waiting around, and I know we talked about this in a previous podcast, but I was sort of like banking on this doing something for me. So I kind of just like stopped making stuff for a while. I also needed a break because I was really tired of hustling for a long time. But like the point I'm trying to make is, it was sort of like do the thing, you know, take the win, relax, but then keep going. Like don't wait for the next thing to happen. Like you go do the next thing.
Speaking of reviews that were not kind, I was just trying to find it, but I cannot. I believe there was a Redbox review that did say something of the effect of, I wish this wasn't a Redbox DVD so I could snap it in half.
Let's talk about critical reception.
That's another podcast.
No matter how much you pour your heart into something, somebody out there wants to hate it, and they want you to know they hate it. And I think this was the first time, I think, in my life where, because I'd grown up making movies and it was very easy to please most, I mean, whatever, they weren't great movies, but they're, for friends and things, it was always like, oh, this is great. This is fun. I'm glad we did this, and we'd done shorts, but, the shorts weren't under the same kind of scrutiny. They weren't being put in the same distribution, platforms that eventually a feature would hopefully get. So this was our first experience in having a film like get distribution and go to different platforms like Redbox, like Showtime, like Amazon, which all have, different ways of reviewing things. And I remember going to like a local Redbox, and I remember like clicking on it to rent it. And I was like, oh, it's so cool. It's in Redbox. And then seeing like, oh no. Oh no. Keep scrolling. Oh no. It was just like bad review after bad review after bad review. And I get it. Like horror is not for everybody. Yeah. And like every movie's not for everybody. Like I like it. I like the story we told, but I totally understand why people, some of the arguments they had. But yeah, there was one night I remember in particular, some of the arguments, 99% of the reviews. Yeah. And if we're being honest, like, I don't think it was reviewed well in general. Like, I don't think there were certainly more negative reviews than positive reviews, if we're being honest with ourselves. And I think it's interesting, though, because that sort of hardened me in a way. Like, the didn't make me hardened me.
There's a quote somewhere, and we'll post it somewhere. I'm certainly getting it wrong, but it's, the worst thing is if someone doesn't have an opinion. Someone sees your work and they just they don't have a thought. They didn't like it. They didn't dislike it. They were in the middle.
Yeah. The worst thing for art to be is boring.
Yes. And so the fact that someone hated it enough to come write a review or loved it enough to come write a review, I think that means that you've been successful at your thing. It's that middle ground, when someone watches your thing and they have no reaction.
The idea of something potentially failing can be freeing, because in my mind, like, I had so much like banking on this mentally, and like, when I was reading these like just very hateful reviews, where you're just like, this guy is really, I don't think I've ever been this mad about a movie that even if I didn't like it. And I do remember specifically being up in the condo that my wife and I were staying at, there, this apartment my wife and I were at the time. And I remember on my laptop going through reviews and just kind of like choking up, because I'm like, man, this is like hard to read. But after that, I remember waking up the next day and being like, you know what? It doesn't matter. This doesn't matter. Like, they don't like it. That's okay. It's okay if they don't like it. I don't need to put that on me. I don't need to let that anxiety build up on me like this. And I think like, and that goes into a bigger story about, making films for yourself and things like that. But, I think it was good, because from here on out, I've never had issues, and we post stuff on YouTube, and I've had, films on YouTube. Checkpoint has almost 1 million views, and not all of them are positive. And to be honest, it brings me great joy to make an old fashioned and read the bad reviews.
It's a fun pastime. I do it occasionally. I love it.
We've actually done that, like at film festivals. If we've got some downtime, we'll pull up the bad reviews and make a drink and just read them and just giggle and like, because it's just, I mean, whatever. At the end of the day, you're not going to please everybody, and it's a fool's errand to try. Like, I do firmly believe that if you make a movie for yourself, generally speaking, you're making something that is relatable to a lot of people, and you're going to find the audience. And if the audience you don't find, maybe you'll get them on the next one. If not, there's other movies out there.
And I think we would be remiss if we didn't mention, we thanked the crew of Patient, but I think we should specifically thank the lead actress to Patient, Annie Reese, who got to sit in a bed all day, hooked up to an 1970s EKG machine. That was not an effect.
That worked.
That was real.
That was 100% real the entire time.
and sat there, not being able to move, not really being able to speak unless it was to the demon that she was talking to, and she was just
cast her. Like, how
she was a trooper.
Annie was incredible.
And I think, like, just like how we were talking, the rest of us have jobs and we're trying to make this work. I think that she also had a full-time job I think she was actually a podcast host and drove down every day to do the shoot, and then would drive back home and do her podcast work at night. So,
and she was the first person there on most days.
On most days,
the joke was sort of like she had the easy job on set because she was in a bed, but it's certainly one of the most emotionally taxing, performances in the film. Brett Brooks, who is a frequent collaborator of ours, did a really great job. And, we have plenty of other people that we met on that film that I'd love to continue to work with again. But there was a lot of people lending their talent. And yeah, I'm very grateful for people coming on and just the idea that people are there and they're believing in you enough to give it their all, like, whether or not it's a personal best for them, but like they're putting something in from themselves to your project. And I always will be grateful for that. And that's one of the most like emotional parts of the filmmaking process, that anyone would come to your set and be willing to put themselves in that position and give it their all. So, and what was our ending?
Just end on a laugh. End on a laugh.
Fade to song.
Authentic.
All right, I'm tired. Let's get done.